Let's talk about something really powerful today: radical empathy. Specifically, how it works in the workplace. For any leader out there, the modern workplace can feel like a total pressure cooker. It's not just about hitting your numbers anymore. It's about trying to navigate a world that just feels, well, more and more volatile every day. This quote, it hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly captures what so many of us feel in our professional lives. We're talking about high-stress meetings, decisions that had to be made yesterday, and this constant nagging pressure to perform. It's an environment where our gut instinct almost every time tells us to fight back, to defend our turf, and to win, no matter the cost. So that's the real question, isn't it? In that kind of environment, how do you actually lead effectively? How do you stay in control and get results when everything around you seems designed for conflict? Well, the answer's kind of surprising, and it comes from this fascinating social experiment that dug into this exact problem. Okay, so here was the setup. The experiment took 5 total strangers and gave them a challenge. For 30 days, they had to handle conflict in a completely different way. And this wasn't just some theoretical exercise, This was a real high-stakes test of their emotional control, right in the middle of their actual lives. And to see how this all applies to the business world, we're going to zero in on one participant in particular. Meet John. John is a driven, successful guy in the corporate world. His entire life is deadlines, big deals, and the bottom line. He's basically our case study for seeing how these ideas play out, not in some textbook, but in the actual trenches of corporate America. And this quote, this just says it all. You can almost hear the skepticism in his voice, right? John's mindset is so relatable. This idea of forgiveness or radical empathy, it sounds soft. It feels completely out of place in a world that's all about results. It's a nice philosophy, maybe, but it's not a strategy. Or so he thought. All right, let's jump into a scene that every single leader knows all too well: the high-stakes meeting. The pressure's on, big ideas are on the table, and you can just feel the egos in the room. This right here, this is the lab where leadership gets put to the test. And then it happens. A coworker doesn't just disagree with John's pitch. They attack it, and they attack him publicly. It's a direct shot, a personal insult meant to cut him down. In that split second, every professional instinct in his body is screaming, "Fight back." This was what was going through John's head. He's in the middle of this 30-day challenge, right? And he's wrestling with this idea of turning the other cheek. But what does that actually look like in a boardroom? Is it just letting someone walk all over you? Is it surrender? This is the exact dilemma leaders face whenever they get challenged head-on. So this slide breaks it down perfectly. John is at a fork in the road. On the left, you have the instinctive reaction: jump in, defend your ego, escalate the whole thing, and ultimately lose control of yourself and probably the meeting. But then look at the right. That's the path of radical empathy. And notice how it starts, with a simple pause. That one little moment lets you de-escalate the whole situation and, this is key, retain control. It's a strategic move. And let's be really clear here. Choosing that second path is incredibly difficult. John's reflection here is so powerful. To resist that primal urge to just lash back took more strength, more discipline than closing a multi-million-dollar deal. This stuff isn't easy, and honestly, that's exactly why it's such a game-changing leadership skill. So what is the skill we're really talking about? Let's call it radical empathy in the workplace. And it's not about being a doormat. As you can see right here, it's the practice of choosing a controlled, intentional response over an emotional, instinctive reaction. It's all about shifting from just reacting to strategically responding. And this is the punchline. This is what John discovered at the end of his journey. By choosing empathy, by choosing that pause, he didn't give away his power. He actually amplified it. He figured out that real strength in leadership isn't about winning every little fight. It's about controlling the dynamic of the room. And that control always starts with controlling yourself. So how can you actually do this? Well, it kind of boils down to this simple 3-step framework. First, just acknowledge the trigger. Feel that flash of anger or defensiveness and just name it for what it is. Step 2, and this is the hardest part, is to pause. Seriously, just for 3 seconds. That's where you take your power back. And then finally, step 3, choose a response that's intentional and de-escalates things instead of pouring fuel on the fire. And that really brings us to the final question. For you. John's whole perspective shifted in just 30 days. So, what would change in your meetings, with your team, in your career? What would happen if you committed to practicing this, not perfectly, but just with intention for the next 30 days? What would it look like if you started choosing control over conflict?